Ding! The system chimed in, notifying him that the Rob the Village Lady mission was officially complete. His reward? One free lottery draw. However, since the next mission level hadn't been unlocked yet due to insufficient conditions, whatever that meant, the system asked if he wanted to roll anyway. Chung Daolei didn't even hesitate. Draw! With dramatic flair, the system summoned the lottery machine. This time, it muttered about being more mindful a passive-aggressive jab at his previous bad luck. Congratulations! Chung Daolei had obtained a secret swordsmanship manual, the Infinity Blade. According to legend, this technique was created by Lai Yao-chun, a grandmaster who trained the Northwest Army's blade force, making them unstoppable in the legendary battle of Zai Fan Ku. Chung Daolei felt an immediate rush of satisfaction. This was good stuff. Meanwhile, at the front gate of Toad Village, a small crowd had gathered. A group of eager villagers enthusiastically told a confused Huang Sanyuan that they had come to help plant peppers. They were practically begging to align themselves with Toad Village. Huang Sanyuan, trying to stifle a laugh, informed them, "Winter's coming. You'll have to wait until spring." The villagers looked disappointed but quickly rallied, promising to be first in line when the planting season started. Back in the village, a single dry leaf floated down, right in front of Chung Daolei and Lu Jihan. He instinctively reached out to catch it before dramatically announcing, "Winter is coming." Lu Jihan shivered, pulling her coat tighter. Chung Daolei noticed and asked, "Are you cold?" She nodded. "All right," he said. "I'll write to Su Ying to buy a pile of winter clothes for the village." "What color do you like?" Lu Jihan, still hugging herself, replied, "Any color is fine." Meanwhile, in Du Mao's prison cell, Chung Daolei strolled in and casually asked, "What's wrong? Not sleeping well? Want me to get you a bed and a quilt?" Shivering, Du Mao glared at him. "How long are you planning to torture me?" Chung Daolei chuckled. "Torture? That's not our style. We treat prisoners well, good wine, good meat, even a buddy to chat with." At that moment, Du Mao's face paled as a terrifying figure flashed in his mind. Liu Bei. Chung Daolei smirked. If Liu Bei could persuade Zhuge Liang, surely, given enough time, he could break Du Mao too. As if on cue, Liu Bei arrived. Chung Daolei stood up, clapping him on the back. "Great work, Du Mao." Upon seeing Liu Bei, visibly trembled and screamed, "Get him away from me!" At the training ground, Chung Daolei sat with Guan Yu, curiously asking, "You and your brothers never practiced martial arts?" Guan Yu shrugged. "Our elder brother thinks one-on-one combat is pointless. If we train, it should be for fighting an entire legion." Chung Daolei squinted at him. "Wow, that's ambitious." Despite Guan Yu's bravado, Chung Daolei suggested he at least learn some self-defense. Guan Yu hesitated. "We don't have a proper teacher." Without a word, Chung Daolei handed him the Infinity Blade manual. Guan Yu flipped through it briefly. Chung Daolei, noticing his unimpressed look, asked, "Can you read it?" Guan Yu nodded, then slammed the book shut. "This is a foot combat technique, useless for horse combat." Chung Daolei blinked. Did he just dismiss an ancient swordsmanship technique in 5 seconds? Guan Yu smirked. "Where did you even get this book?" Chung Daolei folded his arms, answering cryptically, "Do you know the origins of your own skills?" Guan Yu thought for a moment. "I heard rumors that you were taught by gods in your dreams." Chung Daolei beamed. "That's right. The gods bestowed upon me 8,864 sacred combat techniques. I'm invincible on horseback or on foot." Guan Yu nodded. "That's nice, but this sword technique is too basic. Got anything harder?" Chung Daolei felt an existential crisis creeping in. This guy learned an entire martial arts technique just by skimming it and was already asking for more. Walking away, Chung Daolei muttered to himself, "This guy's a freak." Later, at the Toad Village gate, Sun Ju approached Chung Daolei, hesitating. I'm not sure if I should tell you this." Chung Daolei, already tired from dealing with inhumanly talented swordsmen, sighed. "Then don't." Sun Ju ignored him. A minute later, Chung Daolei processed the information. He nodded seriously and simply said, "Understood. Keep at it." Sun Ju smiled at Chung Daolei's easygoing nature, but before leaving, reminded him to be careful. That night, under the moonlight, Zai Yun stood before Elder Lu Muyun's grave, grief-stricken. He poured his heart out. The Lu family, we've lost everything. We've resorted to thievery, and somehow we're proud of it. Anger contorted his face. Even Lu Zhai had fallen in with those thieves. He clenched his fists, his voice shaking. Cheng Daolei, how did you cause Elder Lu's death? He scoffed bitterly. The same people who should have suffered were now well-fed, well-clothed, and completely carefree. He gritted his teeth. These stupid people, they don't even realize it. Zai Yun's voice hardened into a whisper, heavy with vengeance. Revenge doesn't matter anymore. They're all just a bunch of bastards. Zai Yun clenched his fists, his face twisted with bitterness. Everything should have been his. The name, the status, the power, if only fate hadn't played its cruel hand against the Lu family. He envisioned the perfect life. Marrying Lu Zhai, inheriting his foster father's prestigious position, becoming the undisputed head of the Lu family. But now, he was nothing, just a shadow and afterthought. No, his hands trembled as his rage surged. He would not accept this. With a wild cry, Zai Yun unsheathed his swords and slashed at Elder Lu's grave, each swing fueled by years of resentment. Mine, he roared. It should have been mine. His fury consumed him, the relentless echoes of his blades slicing through the night air. Destroy, burn it all down. His mind spiraled, his anger becoming a storm with no end. He would tear the entire village apart if that's what it took. His panting grew ragged, and with one final swing, his sword snapped, leaving him gasping for air. His body trembled, not just from exhaustion but from the sheer weight of his emotions. And then clap, clap, a slow, mocking applause cut through the silence. Zai Yun froze. A voice, dripping with amusement, echoed behind him. What a show! His heart pounded as he turned to face the source. A group of hooded figures stood at the edge of the clearing, their faces obscured by shadows. The leader, a man with an unmistakable air of authority, clicked his tongue. You have all this hatred, yet the only thing you can fight is a lifeless stone? Pathetic. Zai Yun's exhausted expression darkened. Who were these people? The hooded figure smirked, retrieving an object from his robes. He examined it for a moment before tossing it towards Zai Yun, letting it tumble down the cliff's edge. If you're desperate for power, the man said, head north. The Northern Barbarian Division has a place for you. One of the hooded men shifted uneasily. Young prince, he whispered. Is this wise? This man is cursed. Helping him might bring ruin upon us. The so-called young prince laughed softly. He's just a pawn. No matter how much he struggles, he'll never be a threat to us. Then, with a wave of his hand, the group turned and disappeared into the darkness, their cloaks vanishing like specters in the night. Zai Yun stood frozen, staring at the fallen object below. His hands shook as he descended the rocky ledge and picked it up. His lips curled into a grimace. The Northern Barbarian Division. As he stared at the distant horizon, he whispered, I quit the Lu clan. The village was quiet, the world bathed in moonlight. Zai Yun moved like a shadow, his breath steady but his heart racing. He slipped into the storage room, where the village's precious food stock was kept. He knelt, pulling out a small flint stone and striking it against metal. Spark, burn it all. If he couldn't have what was his, then no one else would either. A flicker of flame danced across his fingers. Need a light. Zai Yun's blood ran cold. The voice was teasing, sarcastic, and right behind him. He spun around to find Cheng Daolei and a group of villagers staring at him. Cheng Daolei smirked. If firewood's running low, I'd be happy to help. Zai Yun's hands clenched. Show you, take Lu Zhai somewhere safe, Cheng Daolei ordered. Guan Yu stationed men at the gate. No one lets him out. Lu Zhai's voice wavered. Zai Yun, don't do this. But Zai Yun's frustration erupted. He let out a battle cry, unsheathing his blades and lunging straight for Cheng Daolei. Die, Cheng Daolei. With a flicker of steel, Cheng Daolei blocked the strike. His voice was eerily calm. The wages of sin are death. Zai Yun's eyes widened. He's improved. Memories of their last fight flashed in his mind, how he had effortlessly kicked Cheng Daolei away with a single move. But now Cheng Daolei was matching him. Zai Yun gritted his teeth and launched a flurry of wild, rapid strikes. each attack blocked, each attempt countered. Chung Daolei wasn't just defending. He was toying with him. With a sudden, unexpected burst of power, Chung Daolei slid back, momentarily forced on the defensive. Kin Man, watching from the sidelines, saw an opportunity. He twirled his spear and stepped forward. "You don't need to dirty your hands on this one," Kin Man said to Chung Daolei. "I'll finish him." Before Zai-Yun could react, Kin Man's spear smashed into his chest. Crack. Zai-Yun was sent flying into a pile of sacks, coughing up blood. Gasping for air, his mind screamed, "Not here. Not now. I can't die here." Desperation took over. He grabbed a sack of flour and hurled it at Kin Man. The flour exploded, creating a thick cloud of dust. Villagers coughed, momentarily blinded. Zai-Yun ran. "Get the torches!" someone yelled. A villager chased after him, rage in his voice. "You tried to burn our food, you bastard." For the people of Toad Village, food was everything. Many had risked their lives for mere scraps. And tonight, Zai-Yun tried to take it all away. Even the Lu family now hated him to the core. In the depths of the village, Du Mao stirred in his cell. Bang! Commotion outside made him frown. What the hell is going on out there? Zai-Yun ducked into an alleyway, pressing himself against the shadows. A guard spotted him. The moment their eyes met, Zai-Yun lunged. The guard barely had time to react before a scream pierced the night. The sound sent a chill through Kin Man and Chung Daolei, both of whom immediately turned toward the prison. Kin Man's face darkened. Shit, the prison. Realization slammed into Chung Daolei. His eyes widened in horror. "Move!" he barked. His urgent cry echoed through the village. "He's going to release the monster." Zai-Yun stood in front of the prison cell, keys in hand. Du Mao leaned forward, intrigued. "Oh, here to kill me?" he mused. Zai-Yun's lips curled. "I'll set you free. In return, you save my life." Beyond the prison walls, torches flickered as villagers approached, their anger palpable. One of the prison guards, clutching his injuries, recounted the attack. "He struck me down and ran inside," the guard gasped. "He's locked himself in." Chung Daolei's fists clenched. Suddenly, bam! The prison doors exploded open. Du Mao stood at the entrance, grinning. "Freedom," he said, cracking his knuckles. His gaze locked onto Chung Daolei. "Time to kill you." Chung Daolei took a deep breath. Everyone spread out. "Don't die for nothing." Du Mao sneered. "Kin Man, long time no see." He raised a single hand and shattered the prison door with a flick of his wrist. Chung Daolei declared that their previous fight had been too brief, so this time, they'd go another round. Gu Mao grinned, locking eyes with Kin Man, who simply replied that he was happy to oblige. Without hesitation, Kin Man swung his spear at Gu Mao, who instinctively grabbed the prison door and used it as a shield. The force of the impact sent them both sliding back, but neither wasted time. Kin Man lunged again, and Gu Mao skillfully dodged, the two exchanging rapid blows with impressive precision. Gu Mao leaped, aiming a strike at Kin Man, who expertly blocked it. Instead of frustration, Gu Mao's face showed amusement. He was enjoying himself, dodging Kin Man's moves with ease, a cocky smirk playing on his lips. Before their fight could escalate further, Chung Daolei raised a hand and ordered Kin Man to stand down. At the same time, he signaled the archers to split into groups of 10 and prepare to fire. With practiced precision, the first wave of arrows rained down. Gu Mao reacted instantly, using the door as a shield, but even he couldn't avoid everything. A grazing arrow sliced his cheek. Chung Daolei remained composed, directing the second team to unleash another volley. Gu Mao cursed under his breath. He barked at Zai-Yun to follow him, and together they fled, maneuvering through the chaos while still using the door for cover. The villagers pursued relentlessly, coordinating their movements to trap Gu Mao and Zai-Yun against the cliffside, cutting off all possible escape routes. Despite taking an arrow to the leg, Gu Mao pressed on, dragging a struggling Zai-Yun toward the cliff's edge. Under the pale moonlight, they found themselves completely cornered, with Chung Daolei's forces blocking every way out. Chung Daolei stepped forward, shaking his head with a sigh, and addressed Gu Mao like an old friend. He suggested that instead of dying like a fool, Gu Mao should join them, drink wine, feast on meat, and live comfortably. Gu Mao scoffed, his grip on Zai Yun tightening. He spat on the ground and growled that he'd rather die than fall for Chung Daolei's tricks. Even if he became a ghost, he swore he'd come back to haunt him. Chung Daolei scratched his head, genuinely exasperated. This guy was really stubborn. He turned to Liu Bei, sighing as he ordered him to persuade Gu Mao. Liu Bei, looking absolutely uninterested, gave a bored sigh before stepping forward. Gu Mao, however, stiffened the moment he saw him. Fear flashed across his face. Was Chung Daolei's influence really this vast? Was he working with Liu Bei all along? Gu Mao's composure wavered, and Liu Bei, still looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, casually told Gu Mao to behave himself and just come back so they could talk things over. Gu Mao visibly panicked. No way in hell was he letting himself get dragged into a conversation with Liu Bei again. Without another word, he grabbed Zai Yun and, with one desperate leap, flung both of them off the cliff. Zai Yun screamed in sheer terror, his voice echoing into the night as they disappeared into the darkness below. A villager gasped and muttered that the cliff was hundreds of meters high. There was no way they'd survive the fall. Liu Bei furrowed his brows, genuinely confused, as he realized he hadn't even had the chance to say anything yet. Chung Daolei, however, wasn't convinced that the fall meant certain death. If anything, it might trigger some rare event or divine intervention. These things always happen to guys like Gu Mao. Qin Man suggested sending scouts to check below, but Chung Daolei waved him off. Broken rebels weren't worth pursuing. If fate let them live, he figured they'd cross paths again. Just then, snowflakes began to drift from the sky, covering the village in a soft, white blanket. Chung Daolei tilted his head up, remarking that the first snowfall of the year had arrived early. The villagers, exhausted from the chaos of the night, regrouped to deal with the aftermath. Some struggled to stand, others hurried to clear the snow, and a few pointed out that the old house had finally collapsed, something the more superstitious villagers had warned about for years. Strolling through the snowy village, Chung Daolei and Liu Zhai walked side by side on the wooden deck. Liu Zhai admired the snow, commenting on how beautiful it was this year. Chung Daolei, grinning, replied that next year would be even better. As if to ruin the mood, Zhu Xinji poured himself some tea and scoffed at Chung Daolei's optimism. He reminded him that it hadn't rained in half a year, crops had failed, and now, just when seeds had been planted, the snow had come early, killing everything before it could sprout. He warned that running his mouth about good times ahead could backfire if the wrong people heard him. Chung Daolei, however, wasn't fazed. He casually asked if droughts like this happened every year. Zhu Xinji sighed, shaking his head, and clarified that this year was particularly bad. Barely 2 days of rain in the entire rainy season. It was as if the gods themselves wanted the people to starve. Rather than despair, Chung Daolei saw an opportunity. He mused that the heavy snow would make traveling to Black Rock City easier, and more importantly, it would help him rack up some fear points. If they converted their carriage into a sled, their horses would have a lighter load, allowing them to travel faster. And if they ran into trouble in Black Rock City, escaping would be far easier. With a gleam in his eye, Chung Daolei called for Liu Zhai, instructing her to fetch Huang Sanu, and they had a big announcement to make. As the journey began, Chung Daolei looked over the vast, snow-covered landscape and couldn't help but get poetic about it. He admired how the moonlight painted the path ahead, stretching into the endless night. Zhang Fei, usually oblivious to such things, was completely taken aback by Chung Daolei's sudden poetic streak. Staring at him, he blurted out that he never knew Chung Daolei was this talented with words. Chung Daolei laughed, completely pleased with himself. He bragged that he'd once studied from sage books and had dreamed of contributing to the country and its people. Instead, he ended up a bandit on a snowy mountain. He jokingly asked if Zhang Fei found himself in a similar predicament. Zhang Fei, unexpectedly flustered, confessed that he actually liked literature and poetry. Chung Daolei blinked in disbelief. He had always thought Zhang Fei was too rough around the edges for that sort of thing. It was almost comical, the great brute, a closet poet. Zhang Fei cleared his throat, embarrassed, and awkwardly praised Chung Daolei's poem, clearly struggling to keep his admiration in check. Chung Daolei, meanwhile, simply grinned, basking in his own genius. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the mountains, the system suddenly chimed in, announcing a new mission: robbing wealthy families. The objective was simple: successfully complete 2 out of 10 planned heists. The system, ever dramatic, praised Chung Daolei for his righteousness, reminding him of his noble duty as a mountain bandit. It even suggested that certain rich and cruel families in Black Rock City were in dire need of a lesson. Preoccupied with his mission book, Chung Daolei flipped through its pages, reminiscing about his past triumphs. He recalled how he had outmaneuvered the Huang family, captured Lu Zhai, and even subdued Du Mao, tying him up and dragging him to the mountain like a prized catch. Confidence swelled in his chest. This new mission shouldn't be too hard. But a nagging feeling of unease crept into his thoughts. What if something went wrong? To shake off the doubt, he turned to Kin Man and asked how far they were from Black Rock City. Kin Man estimated an hour's journey and suggested staying the night at a nearby Buddhist temple before heading into the city at dawn. Chung Daolei agreed, thinking it best to rest before gathering intel. When they arrived at the abandoned temple, their plans hit a snag. Xiao Yu, ever watchful, spotted a fire flickering inside. He quickly reported that someone had beaten them to it. Kin Man furrowed his brows, wondering what kind of people would be holed up in such a place, especially in this freezing weather. Curious, Chung Daolei suggested they take a look. They approached the dilapidated temple cautiously, pushing open the heavy wooden doors. A warm campfire crackled in the center, and Chung Daolei instinctively tightened his grip on his weapon. His voice echoed within the chamber as he called out, announcing their presence and asking the unseen occupants to reveal themselves peacefully. Silence hung in the air before a familiar voice responded, recognizing Chung Daolei. His expression turned deadpan as he spotted the figure by the fire. Gao Fei Bao, Vice Master of Flying Tiger. Gao Fei Bao, ever the opportunist, let out a hearty laugh, teasing Chung Daolei about his dedication to hard work even in the dead of winter. Chung Daolei smirked, playfully remarking that he wasn't in it for riches, just training his men. Then, with a raised brow, he asked Gao Fei Bao if Tiger Village had finally run out of food, causing him to camp out in the wilderness. Gao Fei Bao scoffed, denying the accusation with exaggerated irritation, claiming that Tiger Village was doing just fine. They were merely out on a leisurely activity. Before their banter could continue, one of Gao Fei Bao's men rushed in, reporting that someone was outside. Panic flashed across Gao Fei Bao's face as he hurriedly ordered the fire to be put out. But before they could act, Chung Daolei stopped him, peering outside. He advised caution, suspecting that their intruders might actually be familiar faces. Sure enough, the doors creaked open again, revealing none other than White Wolf. She raised an eyebrow at the sight of Chung Daolei, and Gao Fei Bao huddled around the fire, commenting on their unexpected dedication to work. As they settled in, meat roasted over the fire, and Kin Man handed Chung Daolei a flask of wine to warm up. Chung Daolei, in turn, suggested that their men should also drink a little to fend off the cold. Gao Fei Bao, ever curious, eyed Chung Daolei's meal and asked what he was eating. Chung Daolei casually replied that it was nothing fancy, just some baked bread and smoked bacon, the kind of hardship one endured while traveling. He then turned to White Wolf, asking what she had brought for herself. White Wolf shifted uncomfortably under Gao Fei Bao's silent stare. Meanwhile, Gao Fei Bao's own group busied themselves, cooking a simple soup over the fire. He ladled some into a bowl, and Chung Daolei immediately recognized it as sorghum flour paste. Amused, he quipped about their healthy, plant-based diet, suggesting it must be loaded with fiber. Gao Fei Bao forced a laugh, but the men behind him didn't take the joke too well. Seeing the tension, Chung Daolei extended an invitation, offering to share food and drinks. Gao Fei Bao hesitated, brushing it off, claiming they were already full. But the longing stares from his men told a different story. Sensing an opportunity, Chung Daolei leaned back and declared that since they weren't interested, he and his men would just finish everything themselves. Gao Fei Bao's group immediately tensed. Someone grumbled that Gao Fei Bao should have just accepted the offer. Another lamented that they hadn't eaten meat in months. Gao Fei Bao, seeing the dissatisfaction in his men's faces, awkwardly tried to save face. He rummaged through his belongings and pulled out some soybean cookies, suggesting they share those instead. His men looked less than thrilled. Meanwhile, Chung Daolei let out a loud burp and called for Shinji to feed the horses, thanking him for his effort. As Shinji checked the sacks, one of Gao Fei Bao's men casually remarked on Bao's supposed baking skills. Bao, flustered, quickly denied it, claiming his old mother had packed the pastries for him. Another man eagerly asked if he could have one. That was when Gao Fei Bao noticed something strange. Turning to Shinji, he asked what they fed the horses. Shinji, oblivious to the impending disaster, shrugged and replied that they had some dried cookies. He sighed, commenting that it wasn't the same as being at home, but at least the horses weren't starving. Silence. Gao Fei Bao's men paled. A horrified realization dawned on them. They had just eaten the same food as the horses. A collective awkward pause filled the air. The next day, the three groups dispatched scouts into the city to gather intelligence while Cheng Daolei, Zhao Bailang, and Gao Fei Bao remained at the temple. While Cheng Daolei focused on cooking, Gao Fei Bao basked in the warmth of the fire. That was when White Wolf, always one for excitement, suggested playing a game. Intrigued, Gao Fei Bao immediately agreed, but Cheng Daolei, still chewing on bread, eyed them skeptically. He questioned whether they even had enough money to gamble. White Wolf smirked. With a teasing lilt in her voice, she leaned closer, her eyes glinting mischievously. If they had no money, she purred, she could always pay with her life. Cheng Daolei froze mid-bite. His face turned slightly red. He swallowed, slowly looking up at her, suddenly much more interested in the game. Cheng Daolei grinned, suggesting they play a few rounds, his excitement evident in his tone. He declared that if White Wolf won, he'd even stake his own life as payment. Gao Fei Bao, feeling ignored, huffed and reminded them that he wasn't invisible. With a bit of back and forth, the three finally settled on wagering wine. Whoever won would get to drink to their heart's content. The game unfolded, and soon White Wolf, clearly intoxicated, swayed with a dazed expression, a thin trail of drool at the corner of her mouth. Time passed, and Cheng Daolei found himself shaking the now nearly empty wine container, lost in thought. Was he really losing every single round? Or had these two conspired just to get themselves drunk at his expense? Before he could voice his suspicions, Shunji arrived, interrupting their gathering with news. Cheng Daolei, pleased to see him, welcomed him warmly and invited him to join them for a drink to shake off the cold. Shunji, however, wasted no time and laid out the results of their scouting mission, unfolding a freshly drawn topographical map of Black Rock City. Cheng Daolei raised an eyebrow, impressed by the level of detail. He complimented Shinji, admitting that he didn't know he could draw. Shinji, modest as ever, shook his head and clarified that he hadn't made it. Curious, Cheng Daolei turned to Xiaoyu, teasingly suggesting that with his refined literary skills and martial prowess, it must have been him. But Xiaoyu, too, dismissed the notion, stating that he found wielding a pen far more challenging than handling a sword. That left only one possibility. Cheng Daolei was about to guess when Zhang Fei stepped forward, rubbing the back of his head with a sheepish grin. I drew it, he admitted. Intrigued, Cheng Daolei listened as Zhang Fei revealed a bit of his past. His father had once aspired for him to take the imperial examinations in Beijing, but as chaos overtook the world, those dreams had faded. Now he seemed content with where life had taken him. Cheng Daolei gave him a thumbs up, genuinely impressed. He realized then that the pieces were falling into place. The plan was set, and the timing was all that remained. He simply had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. A few days passed, with the people of Toad Village constantly busy, working late into the night. Gao Fei Bao, unable to contain his curiosity, approached Cheng Daolei, pressing him for details about their target. He wanted a hint. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment Flamingo and subscribe for future parts.